Hello everybody and welcome back in the channel. We think about wildlife photography like a very expensive activity, where we need big telephotos, lenses and super fast camera in order to capture every animal on Earth. Will it be like that? Let's go to discover it. Are you fascinated about wildlife photography? Do you want to understand how to approach a wildlife? Okay, subscribe to my channel. I'll tell you what I've learned, every tips and tricks of this beautiful world. It's just a click. And don't forget to allow the notification bell in order to receive every news from my channel. So let's crack on! To be honest, wildlife photography is really expensive, but you can also achieve good results with cheap cameras and lenses. So don't despair, because I'll tell you everything. I started in 2013 with an old Sony camera, the A57 model, really small, really nice, and with some good feature, like the shooting bars of 12 FPS, but only in JPEG mode. In RAW it was lower. With that camera I took several nice pictures, despite the AF wasn't so reliable. And we talk of a camera that cost only 300 euros with the kit lens. So I started to study the functions of the camera in order to understand how to use it for wildlife and to be faster in setting up when I was in the field. But only after some months I understood that it wasn't really good for a good wildlife photography camera. So in that period I had the opportunity to buy a second-hand camera, the Sony Alpha 77 Mark II. That was another plan. And my way to do wildlife photography changed in better. Yes, to be honest, the camera, the difference in terms of the good picture, often in focus, and with good files to edit. Furthermore, it was sturdy and big, like a pro camera, and they did me a lot of satisfaction. It was also quite expensive, even though I could have bought it off second hand. Now, I left the light of Sony camera and I'm only using the mirrorless, the Sony's A7R Mark II and the A9. The second one just for wildlife. But this is another story and perhaps another video. Okay guys, we are talking about cameras. You know, we have plenty of cameras, full frame cameras, APS-C cameras and micro four thirty cameras and compact cameras, of course. In my opinion, you have to consider at least two things for a wildlife camera on a budget: the sensor and the AF system. Leaving the full frame cameras, due to their very cost, we have at least two solutions: APS-C and micro four thirty. We'll face separately the compact cameras. To start with wildlife photography, an APS-C or micro four thirty camera is definitely a good start. Why? Mainly for one reason: the sensor. A camera with an APS-C sensor has a crop factor or 1.5 or 1.6 per, depending on the brand. So for instance, Canon has a crop factor of 1.6 per, Nikon and Sony 1.5 per, and Olympus 2 per. So what does it mean? Okay, it means that both cameras will have a frame and image bigger than a full frame camera of the crop factor. Okay, it is so simple, but it's just to simplify things. Using a same focal length, 300mm for example, on a full frame camera, on a APS-C camera will have 450mm of focal length with Nikon and Sony, and 380mm with Canon and 600mm with Olympus. Wow! Yes, it's like you have a bigger lenses, and this is a very important in wildlife photography because the lens is never enough. Another aspect to consider, even though I think it's not essential, is the AF system of the camera. But it must be really reactive, and if it's possible, but add some specific feature, at least for sport photography. A reliable tracking system is a must for wildlife photography in order to follow the animal movement. But there is also another thing to consider. Wildlife photography also means to photograph more static subjects, like birds in a pond or a mammal in a countryside. So having a fast AF is pretty useless, and I think you can get good picture with a normal AF system as well. That means a cheaper camera. AF system is also linked to another aspect of the sensor, the number of the AF points. It means that every sensor has an amount of points to use as AF point. And the more AF point you have, the more simple will be focusing. So try to look for a camera with the most AF points. A compact camera is a camera with a fixed lens that usually allows to use a wide range of focal length, usually up to 600mm, full frame equivalent. But there are also some models with bigger numbers, like for example the Nikon Coolpix P1000 with an optical zoom up to 3000mm of focal length, a huge number for wildlife photography. Usually that kind of camera are quite good and they make good images in good light condition. But when there is less light, you could have some issue due to the small sensor size. But having a so big focal length range could be a huge advantage in wildlife photography. And usually they are quite small and lightweight, so you can carry everywhere without any issue. Okay, just to recap about camera. The best aspect to consider is the sensor. A smaller sensor will give you a bigger crop factor, so you reach big focal length also with small length lenses. But if you are a newbie and you have some doubt about wildlife photography and maybe you would like just to try it, a compact camera might be a solution because you'll get everything all together, camera and lenses. Now, we forget about the prime telephoto lenses, because we can't afford them, but there are some solutions. Okay, depending on the camera, APS-C or Micro Four Thirds, you need to look for a lens of the same kind. But in some cases, for APS-C cameras, you have to use full-frame lenses because there aren't APS-C version of some kind of lenses. There aren't a problem for Micro Four Thirds cameras because their lenses are specifically for that kind of cameras. At the beginning, I think it should be better to look for flexibility. So a zoom telephoto lens could be a really good lens to start. A classic lens is the 70-300mm zoom lens that with an APS-C camera will give you a 105 and 450mm equivalent lens, and with a Micro Four Thirds will be a 140-600mm equivalent lens. Really good, isn't it? But if you can afford to buy a 150-600mm lens by Tamron or Sigma, for example, you get a 200 to 25 and 900mm equivalent lens in an APS-C camera, and 300 and 1200mm lens in a Micro Four Thirds camera. But be careful, so far I think there isn't a lens like that for Micro Four Thirds, and perhaps will be really expensive. Actually, there are cheaper lenses like the 18-300mm by Tamron, just announced for APS-C mirrorless camera, mainly for Sony and Fuji. So you'd have a 27-450mm equivalent lens, and consider the good price, it will be a good choice to start. A good thing is that usually you can find that lenses as a used item, often in really good condition, spending usually half price of a new lens. In theory, you might also look for a manual lens to spend less, but it's more difficult to use and often they don't have a good image quality, and focus manually is not for everybody. Okay, I'm not telling that it's impossible to manual focus, even because in past, when the AF didn't exist, a lot of wildlife photographers took their picture in that way and with really good results. But why give up about autofocus? It's so comfortable and useful, and it will get easier your photography life. Okay, to start, I think for 70-300mm lens, 100-400mm or better 150-600mm lens is good, mostly if you find them as second hand. I think the only accessory really useful now is a tripod with a decent ball head. Both tripod and ball head have to manage the weight of the system, I mean camera and lens, so you need to pay attention about the specification of the tripod not to fit your needs. Then some spare batteries, just to be sure. Okay. It's time to come to a conclusion. Speaking about prices, an APS-C camera with a 24-megapixel sensor and a 18-300mm lens can be found at about 800-1000 euros, but with a 150-600mm lens at about 700 euros. For mirrorless system, prices are pretty similar. Then you have to add the tripod, so you have to add at least 150 euros, but you can also go for used stuff, spending so quite less. If you are lucky, you will be able to spend half. Good places to look up used stuff are forums, but you have to be aware that you can find some cheater, so pay always attention. Okay guys, thanks for the patience. Thanks for watching the video. If you like it, please give me a like. Let me know if there is some doubt, leaving the question in the comment section below. Anyway, thanks again. Take care and have the nature. See you. Bye bye.